welcome to the Deep Dive. So today we are analyzing, well, a bit of a brutal truth about the middle of your life. There are two very, very different versions of you waiting at age 40.
That's it. It's the financial halftime. On one side, you have the struggling 40-year-old. They might have a decent salary, sure, but they're just drowning in consumer debt. They're avoiding their credit card statements.
Wondering where all the money goes every single month.
Exactly. And then you have the other version.
The secure 40-year-old. They're sleeping well. They can handle a bit of economic craziness without panicking. And this is the big one. They have options. Real options.
Yes. And the difference between those two people, it's not luck. It's not some big inheritance.
Right. It's not about picking one hot stock back in 2015. What we found in all the source material you gathered is that it really boils down to 9 specific, non-negotiable decisions.
Decisions made in your 20s and 30s. Turning 40 it's when the consequences of every financial choice you made finally show up. They arrive either as this gift of freedom or as a pile of obligations.
So our mission today is to cut through all the noise. We're going to examine the expert consensus and give you the blueprint. This is the deep dive into the absolute minimum foundation you have to build now so that the secure version of you is the one who shows up at halftime. So let's unpack this.
And we're going to start not with spreadsheets, but with something a little more fundamental. Intentionality. Everything, and I mean everything, starts with defining what you actually want.
I know, that can sound a little bit like a line from a self-help book, but this is so foundational. Goal number 1, define your ideal financial lifestyle. Because the biggest trap, the one most people fall right into, is chasing a target they never even defined. They just assume, more money equals more happiness.
And that chase has a name. It's lifestyle creep. And it's powered by the psychological quirk called hedonic adaptation. The brutal truth is that your brain adapts to a new luxury, that bigger house, the fancier car, in about 3 months.
3 months. That's it.
That's it. The little burst of happiness you get is temporary, but that permanently higher expense, that is now locked into your budget forever. So we end up on this treadmill just needing more and more income to basically stay in the same place emotionally.
So intentional living means you have to sit down and figure out what actually matters to you. Mm-hmm. Is it, say, the flexibility to travel for a month every year? Is it a paid-off home with a backyard?
Versus what you think should bring you joy. The expensive car you don't really care about, the designer clothes. Once you have that clarity, it simplifies everything. You can spend aggressively on the things that matter and just be ruthless about cutting everything else. And that clarity, it leads us right into our second non-negotiable.
The second move. This one has to be done by 40. Achieve 0 non-mortgage debt.
Absolutely 0. I'm talking credit cards, personal loans, car loans, even student loans. I know the prevailing wisdom says some of that can be good debt.
Okay, let me just push back on that for a second. Let's say someone has a student loan at, 4% interest. And they can invest and pretty reliably get an 8% return in the market. Isn't it smarter to keep the debt and invest the difference? Isn't that just good leverage?
It is smart math in a vacuum. It is. But we're not talking about a spreadsheet. We're talking about the reality of life at 40. Life is just exponentially more complex than it was at 25. You have kids, maybe aging parents, huge career demands, and any debt, even low-interest debt, becomes the psychological anchor. It restricts your ability to make decisions when a crisis inevitably hits.
So if you lose your job, that 4% payment is no longer a tiny inconvenience.
It's a source of absolute panic. The security and the options you gain by being completely unencumbered, it just far outweighs that tiny extra return you might get.
It's about minimizing risk and maximizing your freedom to move.
Precisely. And let's just look at the brutal math of bad debt for a second. Say you're carrying $20,000 in credit card debt at 18% interest. That's sadly common. If you only make minimum payments, you could be paying that off for over 30 years. And you'd end up paying over $40,000 just in interest.
$40,000, that's life-changing money.
It's the price you paid for having 0 flexibility. That money should have been compounding for you. And ironically, getting rid of all that debt lets you really nail the third move, which is building a massive financial reputation.
Goal 3, aim for a credit score of 800 or higher by the time you hit 40.
This one sounds like a paradox, right? We just told you to eliminate debt, but you need this. Unless you plan on paying cash for everything for the rest of your life, you're going to need to borrow at some point, and you want the best possible deal.
So you're building up your financial trustworthiness.
Yes. And it just takes 2 things, consistency and patience. The big misconception is that you need to carry a balance on your card to build a high score. You absolutely do not. Just use credit responsibly, pay it off in full every single month, and let time do its work.
So what's the real tangible difference? I mean, why shoot for 800 instead of, say, a pretty good 720?
The cost difference is just staggering. Okay, picture a $500,000 mortgage. The difference between a 3% rate, which an 800 score might get you, and a 4% rate for a lower score. That will cost you nearly $100,000 over the life of the loan.
$100,000. Wow. That's a Tesla. That's 4 years of college tuition.
It's a penalty for not mastering this skill earlier. So that brings us from reputation to protection. The next step is building your financial life jacket.
Goal 4, establish a solid emergency fund.
This is probably the least sexy part of personal finance, but it is so important. And it has to be cold, hard, instantly accessible cash. Not invested, not loaned out to a friend. Cash. It's the layer of protection that ensures you never have to go back into debt or, God forbid, sell your investments at the worst possible time.
Yeah, when you're 25 and you lose your job, you can, eat ramen and maybe crash with your parents. When you're 40, you've got a mortgage, you might have kids. The consequences of having no buffer are just catastrophic.
The rule of thumb you always hear is 3 to 6 months of living expenses. But given the responsibilities at this stage of life, you should really lean towards 6 months. That cash gives you breathing room to make good decisions, not desperate ones.
Right. If you lose your job, you can wait for the right job offer, not just grab the very first one that comes along.
It's buying yourself time and choice.
Yeah.
It's what people call FU money. Not so you can tell off your boss necessarily.
But so you have the power to say yes or no on your own terms.
It gives you leverage over your circumstances. And speaking of leverage, that brings us to the biggest differentiator on this entire list: real wealth building.
Okay, this is the one. This is the goal that separates people who work forever from people who have choices. Goal number 5. You need to have at least 5 times your annual expenses invested in the market by age 40.
This is the critical point where you truly harness compound interest. I mean, what Einstein supposedly called the most powerful force in the universe. And this specific target, 5 times your expenses, is what financial independence nerds call coast fire.
Okay, hold on. Explain that. I'm sure a lot of people haven't heard that term. What does coast fire actually look like, and what does it get you?
So if your annual living expenses are, say, $100,000, you need $500,000 invested. And the magic of hitting that target by 40 is this: you could technically stop contributing to your retirement accounts entirely.
Wait, entirely?
Entirely. The power of compounding growth alone will likely carry that amount to a very comfortable retirement sum by age 65 without you adding another single dime. You get to just coast to the finish line.
So all the heavy lifting is done in those early years, and then time in the market take over.
Yeah.
That is staggering. What's the math look like?
It's incredible. If we assume a pretty conservative 8% average annual return, which is historically reasonable, that $500,000 at age 40 becomes over $3 million by age 65. If you start saving aggressively in your 20s, that money has 3, maybe 4 doubling periods. If you wait until your late 30s, you lose that prime compounding window forever.
That makes the cost of procrastination so much higher than even high-interest credit card debt.
Oh, absolutely. But the strategy here isn't complicated. You don't have to be a stock-picking genius. The best advice is actually pretty boring. Use broad, predictable index funds, a total stock market fund, an S&P 500 fund. They remove the guesswork, the fees are tiny, and you just let time do the work.
Okay, let's shift gears. We've talked about financial accounts. Now let's talk about personal accounts. Goal number 6, building substantial career capital.
Yes. Your 20s, they're for exploration, trying different things, figuring out what you're good at. But your 30s have to be about specialization. Career capital is that collection of specialized skills, expertise, and your professional network that makes you indispensable. It's what lets you command a higher salary or better working conditions.
And why is that so critical right before 40?
Because your 40s are going to demand some serious financial horsepower. For mortgages, for kids' tuition, for everything. Your career capital is the engine that generates that horsepower. If you hit 40 and you're still kind of job hopping without a deep skill, you lose your negotiating power. The most successful people at this age have mastered something specific and valuable.
Because it's the asset that feeds all the other financial goals we've talked about.
It's the engine, exactly.
Yeah.
And you have to keep that engine in peak condition. Which leads us, maybe surprisingly, to goal number 7, developing an age-appropriate fitness routine.
This is the one that I think catches people off guard. But the connection is so critical.
Yeah.
Your body is the single largest generator of your future income. If that machine breaks down, everything else we've talked about, coast fire, zero debt, it all becomes kind of irrelevant.
Poor health is a financial catastrophe just waiting to happen. You get hit with huge medical costs, reduced earning capacity. It's a disaster.
And I think the emphasis on age appropriate is the key here. The way you work out in your late 30s is not the same as when you were 22.
Exactly. It's not about ego lifting anymore. It's about long-term function, mobility to prevent injury, strength training to maintain bone density, and being ruthless about cutting out processed foods that wreck your metabolic health. You have to treat your body like the incredibly valuable asset it is.
All right, moving on to the less pleasant but absolutely mandatory goals. Goal number 8, completing your estate plan and getting life insurance.
This is peak adulting, and it is completely non-optional if anyone depends on your income.
So let's start with life insurance. What's the rule of thumb there?
You need about 10 to 12 times your annual living expenses in coverage. So if your family spends $60,000 a year, you need at least $600,000 in coverage.
And what kind of insurance are we talking about?
Plain, boring term life insurance. That is it. You buy coverage for a specific period, say 20 or 30 years. If you pass away during that term, your family gets the payout. Avoid whole life insurance.
Okay, why is whole life so strongly discouraged? You hear ads for it all the time saying it's a great investment.
Because it's a terrible product for almost everyone. The premiums are way higher than term life because a huge chunk is going to commissions and fees. You're mixing insurance and investing, and you're doing both of them badly. Term life is pure affordable protection. For a healthy 35-year-old, a huge policy might cost less than your Netflix and Spotify subscriptions combined. It's the best deal you'll ever get.
And the estate planning part, Wills, power of attorney, that's not just for super rich people, right?
Not at all. Anyone with any assets or especially minor children needs this. If you don't have these basic documents and the worst happens, your family gets forced into something called probate court. Probate is slow, it's public, it's expensive, and it all happens during the most stressful time of their lives. A few hours of work now saves them months of pain later.
Okay, and that brings us to our final and maybe the most uncomfortable move on the list. Goal number 9, talk to your aging parents about their finances.
Ugh, this is the one. This can hit people in their 40s like a freight train, and it can completely derail your own financial plan. We often use what we call the 70-40 rule as a trigger for this. When a parent hits age 70 or you hit age 40, it's time to have the conversation.
And what are you asking specifically? You're not demanding to see their bank statements, are you?
No. You need to know 2 main things. First, do they have a plan for long-term care? That can easily cost $10,000 a month. And second, are there legal documents in place? Power of attorney for health, for finance. You're not being nosy. You're trying to prevent a situation where you suddenly become responsible for huge unforeseen costs that could force you to liquidate your own retirement savings.
That is an incredible amount of weight resting on one very difficult conversation.
It is. But believe me, the alternative is so much worse.
So let's recap. We've covered 9 massive non-negotiable moves. Defining your lifestyle, killing all your consumer debt, getting that 800 credit score, building a 6-month cash reserve, hitting your coast fire number, maximizing your career capital, protecting your physical health, getting life insurance and an estate plan, and then finally, having that tough talk with your parents.
These 9 goals, they are the minimum entry fee for having real options in the second half of your life. Hope is not a strategy, it's just a lottery ticket.
The secure version of you at 40 didn't get there by chance. They got there by making these deliberate, sometimes really hard decisions while time was still on their side, allowing compound interest in their finances and in their career to just work its magic.
Which leaves us with the final question for you to think about. Your 40-year-old self is watching every single decision you make today. What action are you going to take right now to make sure they're not disappointed?